Hello, welcome to the Self-Learning Podcast by Dr. Sushma Singh. Let us start discussion on Unit 8, the conceptual and the theoretical issues of power. And we are continuing our topic, concept of power. And subtopic is power and authority. When power acquires legitimacy or justification, it is understood as authority. It may be noted that authority receives voluntary obedience. A person who has authority may exercise command or control over other persons. Take the example of a senior bureaucrat who assigns tasks to his subordinates and may even transfer some of them to another city. This is because the bureaucrat has the authority to do it by virtue of his position and status in the government machinery. In formal organization, authority is clearly specified and dispensed through rules and laws of the organizations. It may be understood at this stage that the exercise of authority does not necessarily imply the superiority of the person who commands. A teacher may be a better scholar than the principal of the school, who dismisses him or her. It is simply because of the authority which vests with the principal that he or she may suspend a teacher. Power may therefore be executed in formal organizations as institutionalized authority and as institutionalized power in informal organizations. Now the next point is power and prestige. E. A. Ross drew attention to prestige as the immediate cause of the location of power. It was said that the class which has more prestige will have most power. Prestige therefore is an important source of power. It is not appropriate to associate prestige with the power, because prestige is usually not accompanied with power. In itself, power becomes the basis of prestige. That is, when a person has power, he or she has prestige. But when a person has prestige, he or she may not have power. Now the next point is power and influence. There is a close connection between power and influence. Power commands obedience and submission. Influence is persuasive rather than coercive. Power calls for intended control, which is usually executed through sanctions, while influence does not involve the use of sanctions or punishments. Influence is not essentially accompanied with power. Newton, for example, was a man of influence but not power. A policeman may have power but not influence. In the same vein, the Prime Minister of the country is a person with both power and influence. Now the next point is power and dominance. Power exists and expresses itself in intergroup relations. It is associated with status that people occupy in formal organizations, while dominance is associated with one's personality and may be treated as a psychological concept. Power, on the other hand, is associated with the structure of the society itself and may be treated as the sociological concept. Now the next point is theoretical considerations. The major theoretical considerations in the context of power focus on its potential to achieve goals. Here power is treated as equivalent to the domination unfolding the strategy of exercising power over someone and its potential to generate solidarity and collective autonomy. Here, power is understood in the large framework of pursuing collective action as unfolded in the strategy of exercising power to achieve common goals. Against this backdrop, the major currents in the sociological concept of power are discussed here. Now, the point is Max Weber, power and domination. According to Weber, 1914-1920, power is a general concept is distinct from domination as a specific phenomena. Power is defined as an actor's chance to impose his or her will on another, even against the resistance of the latter in the social relationship. What is interesting to note is the proposition that the degree of power is dependent on the nature of submission over the one on whom it is being exercised. Stated simply, power is more if the probability of submission to the will of the one who holds it is higher. It may be safely said that the power of an individual is measured in terms of the choices of imposing the will. Here, the basis of power or the basis on which imposition of will is called for is not important. Scott explains the power is a potential that is realized through the actions in which an actor engages. This potential is determined by the accidental or fortuitous circumstances. For example, individual has power over others because of better physique or because he or she has information that is not available to others, as much as by structurally defined opportunities and capacities. For example, when social distribution of resources improves or worsens, the chances of realizing his or her will at the disposal of an individual. Domination and Harriscraft, on the other hand, presumes the presence of a here or master. The chief difference between the power and domination is that the former does not imply the right to command and the duty to obey, while the latter implies the probability of gaining willing obedience. There are two contrasting types of domination. The first kind of domination is one that involves a rational and calculative maneuvering of interest in one's favor. Often the individual who exercises domination of this kind is able to convince the subordinate actors that it is their interest which is being served by allowing him or her do what he or she is doing. This often happens when small companies sell their goods to a monopoly retail outlet. In doing so, they subject themselves to the power of the retailer, since their livelihood depends on his or her goodwill. The second type of domination is the one which is exercised by the virtue of authority. Here, domination is exercised by an individual or group because it is legitimatized as authority. Those on whom domination is exercised accept that commands and demands of those who dominate as a basis of their own behavior. The power in this kind of domination emerges from the probability that the command will be obeyed. In addition, Weber distinguishes between three kinds of authority: rational legal authority, which is based on norms, ordinances, and legality of the offices of those who exercise authority. For example, authority exercised by the tax collectors, policemen, bosses in the office. Traditional authority, which is based on a belief in the sacred quality of long-standing traditions and in the legitimacy of those who exercise authority. For example, the domination of the eldest person, the family, and the charismatic authority, which is based on devotion to the sacred quality, heroic strength, or exemplary character of a person. For example, authority of godmen. Now let us wind up the session and take rest. Thank you very much for engaging yourself with the self-learning podcasts.